Hello, this is another video about comic books. I will have the fallacy disclaimer at the beginning again, that comic books are not just for children. They are made by adults, by teams of paid adults working for companies, and they have to cooperate for pay in order to produce these products. And so, therefore, there's a lot packed in them as far as skill level and consistency goes. I will also talk about art theory and the social metaphors involved, because there's political and mythological themes that are expressed through the stories, because there's writers. It's not just about the images. I read them for both the writing and the pictures, so I hope you enjoy this as at least half as much as I do. This is 1985, 1986, 86. This was my first one. Now in 1988, and I'll do another pack tomorrow. But I first purchased these from Danny, the owner of Brainstorm Comics in Frederick, Maryland. A little shout out, because he was always friendly to me throughout the years, and he taught me a lot about business, actually, through talking with him, and about music, because he's a musician, and about comic books. So, let's see, I'll just start with the first one. B, Black Lightning. He has his own show now. Black Manta, the nemesis of Aquaman. Now, those characters are interesting because, being African American, we have a hero, Black Lightning, and a villain, Black Manta. I've heard some of the background that DC, the history of DC Comics and Marvel needing to address the Black Power movement during the late 60s, early 70s, or into the 70s. And they chose to depict it in a few different ways. And it's interesting. But there are a lot of characters like Black Canary and here Black Orchid who are Caucasian, but black meaning in a pejorative, in a negative sense, meaning the opposite of white, which is associated with good. Now, when I went to high school, Catholic high school, we had black students that played basketball. They were basically brought in to play basketball to win games for us. Meanwhile, my soccer team, continued to do our best, but they paid a lot of money to get good coaches so they could import people from all kinds of countries and attract basketball players. And some of them were black, and they told me, they talked about how they didn't like in English class, we would talk about metaphors, and that, why is black always used to mean evil? And I tried to talk with them about this issue because it's interesting to me. I don't know all the African history of the uses of the word, the meanings, the colors, black and white, but I imagine it's very similar to Celtic, because it's not quite as, the mythology behind using those colors is not quite as black and white as you would think. So this gets into some of the paradoxes of color theory again, I talked about before. Some of them, being that the color theory of light has a dichotomy, or a almost opposite meaning in some cases to the color theory of pigment. And okay, here's a character, Blockbuster, that was used recently in an animation. that's on Netflix. And let's see, Blue Beetle, of course, has his own show. I apologize if I'm going to be missing things because I'm also talking about theory at the same time as I look through these. But Bolt. So, yes, the paradox with color theory, just to cover that again, is when you blend all of the colors of light, they make what? White light, much like white noise. When you blend all the colors, the waves, sound waves, like the, and that gets into the weirdness of, that light is both particle and wave in the way that it acts. But, okay, here's Brainiac, very famous villain. And I've spent many hours imagining things about Brainiac in my playtime as a child, and I will never forget all the interesting themes that Brainiac evokes in my mind. Lots of brain characters, geniuses. So, Breathtaker, Bronze Tiger. So again, back to color theory, all of the colors of light, when combined, make white light. All of the pigments, when you combine them in paint, make a dark mud color. And, here's a super intelligent ape named Monsieur Mala, not Grodd. Or, there's another one. But back to black and white. In mythology, the goddess can be a white goddess and represent death. So actually, white can sometimes mean death, which is also considered evil by many people. If you consider life to be good, the opposite would be death. And so you can have a white goddess like Maka, and speak to ancestors. And it actually isn't just evil. Death isn't, of course, just evil. It's a natural occurrence. But being human, we always seek dichotomies. Our minds are split in two. And our brains are constantly trying to come up with yes or no scenarios. Is it 0 or 1? 0 or 1? Okay, here's Captain Marvel. And we have Catwoman, Cheetah, and a bunch of others. So, so that's sort of, what I would say about the black and white issue as far as metaphor goes is, no, it's not. Black and white is really not always black and white. Night is not always evil. I mean, we do associate night with scary things and being the opposite of day. We do most people work during the day. We can see, with the sunlight. And so it's scarier at night. There's some funny comedic characters. Captain Cold has made a comeback in The Flash, which is an interesting show, which I talked about, the environmentalist villain, the eco villain that was recently in that show. But otherwise, I do love that show. It's very interesting. It has a team of characters. They've been doing teams of characters like, based on, like the Legion of Superheroes or the Justice League, and of course all the Avengers movies. Not to be confused with Avengers the Spy Show. Ooh, Captain Nazi. Yes, the Hydra Captain America scenario in Marvel is interesting, but today is DC. So, I don't actually know much about the Nazi version, the Nazi DC characters. But Catman. Okay, Catwoman. Most people like Catwoman. I mean, it's hard not to. And this is the second Catwoman. There's the characters are different, have different names. This one is Selina Kyle, and this one's alter ego is, oh, it's Selina Kyle Wayne. So I don't know. I think there's more than that though. But remember, this is 1988. Cavalier, Cave Carson, Celsius, Challenger's Mountain. This is a really interesting cross-section of a mountain. Challengers of the Unknown. So, you know, when people say they don't know anything about comics, I'm always learning things about comics. I mean, I've been studying comic books, you know, as far back as I can remember. But, Cheetah. Not to be confused with Cheetara of Thundercats. Ho! So, let's see, Chemical King. But yeah, I've been studying comic books for a long, long time. Every year of my life, I try to look at comic books, at least a little bit. I don't like video games. I do not play the latest ones. I don't always know what's going on, you know, with everything new. But I do like revisiting these old characters and just studying the artwork and the mythologies, the storylines, and but there's so many characters. That was my point. That there's so many characters that have been created over the years. And look at just even the Justice League alone. They've tried to include so many different characters that it really there's always another character to explore, one that hasn't been explored yet with their own comic, or you know, they're always making new ones also. But Hawkwoman and Hawkman are in this one, and that's that theme, that dichotomy of male female in characters is interesting, because in mythology it goes back to ancient Egypt, where you have male and female deities. They just would change what the last letter, sort of like O and A, you know, in Spanish, where you know, it designates male or female, but they would basically be the same deity, but you had two of each. So, you know, one aspect for the women and one for the men. Just like human couples that make babies. And that's why it always made sense to me to have a god and goddess, you know. Not just one, you know, claiming to be the only one. Sorry for all you monotheists out there. Wah! I know, it hurts. Okay, Justice Society. The Justice Society. Wonder Woman is in there. Batman, Dr. Fate, Red Tornado, the Old Green Lantern, Black Canary, Robin, Justice Society Headquarters, Kalibak. But yeah, the Hawkman, Hawkwoman, male-female duality of character aspects. Basically, you know, they're basically the same character, just male and female. I want to explore that. I want to do I've been talking with a friend about doing a graphic novel series about a druid and a druidess, or witch and warlock, whatever we want to call them. Ooh, Candor, the shrunken Kryptonian city. Kanjar-Ro. Yeah, a lot of these I don't really know anything about. Some of them I know some about, and a few I know a lot about. But I just love looking at them and going, oh, there's so much more to explore with imagination. You know, it's the variety is endless. The different amalgams of character traits and powers. You know, and I mean, Marvel delves into the aspect of mutant powers, of calling some people born with superpowers mutants, which, you know, raises genetic questions of, you know, when are we considered disabled and when are we considered to have advantages over others because we're different or special. Oh, Killer Frost. She has made a comeback in the recent show. Is it DC Legends? Something like that, where they're time travelers. It's like Doctor Who, where they're on a ship flying around time and space. Killer Moth. Don't know that guy very well. I can't recall anything he's in, but ooh, here's a Nazi, Killer Shark. He's got a swastika because he's full of rage and I guess white supremacism. Okay. Knights of the Galaxy. Cobra La. No, this is not G.I. Joe. But looks like Serpentor in 88. Okay. I'll have to look into that guy. Kong, the Untamed White Child. Okay, Luthor. Lex Luthor, Martian Manhunter. Here's Lex Luthor in his fancy suit, his super-powered suit, so he can take on the specially advantaged, like Superman, who he considers a threat. Oh, there's other Luthors. This is Alexander Luthor Jr. Some of these characters are set in the future, so there you go again, more possibilities when you consider timeline. You know, what time period is your character set in? And, of course, role-playing ties into comic books, because comic books have role-playing games, and they have all these characters. Like, how would you like to play Madame Xanadu? Ooh la la. And Madame Rogue. So, yeah, it's these things are not just for males, they're for females, too. It's really a great joy to play with men and women role-playing games. Not just, and, you know, of course, being a boy, I thought it was fun to play with girls when I could. But, yeah, usually it was boys getting together doing D&D for me. But it's been fun over the years to play with girls or women as well. Mammoth. Don't know anything about it. Man-Bat. Yes. The more terrifying version of Batman. Green Lantern Manhunters? Weird. I don't know. Atlantis. Mars. The Martian Manhunter. I like that they've made him African American. I don't know if he always was. But the recent incarnation of John in, was it Superwoman, Supergirl, the show? I think they have a good actor for him. Oh, the Marvel family. This is sort of like the, what is it? The Incredibles with their red suits. But yeah, Shazam. I think they did a Middle Eastern version, which makes sense. Since I think Shazam, maybe there's a Middle Eastern, maybe there was originally another, like, Muslim version of him, I forget. But anyway, okay. Almost done for the day of Who's Who. Puzzler, Quake Master. So I cut out, I would draw these characters and then cut them out of paper. So I would play with paper dolls for these characters. And it was a cheap, free way to make toys of these characters and create all kinds of scenarios for them to relate to one another. And I think that kind of play is really excellent for storytelling. As adults, we tend to, not do that anymore. Not play with toys unless we have children to play with, for the excuse to play with toys. I guess because of all the responsibilities of adulthood, that we have to, serve the system and pay money and things. But when you can, work with little pawns or whatever, little icons, and have them in your mind, yes, like a schizophrenic, different voices talking to each other, you create dialogue, and that's how writers do it. When you write a story with more than one character, you either have to imagine what they're saying to each other in your own head, or get some help sometimes by talking to other people, using your dialogue with other people as to what the characters are going to say, and try to, but, usually when you're by yourself, you've got to put, you've got to imagine what all these different characters would be saying and where they're coming from, what their backgrounds are, and why they would be motivated to say and do the things they're doing. Here's Ra's al Ghul, who's made a comeback in DC motion pictures. Raven. Red Tornado, Reverse Flash. The Riddler. Yeah, the Riddler is awesome. Some different Robins I was talking about with Batman yesterday. Robot Man. Rose and Thorn. Royal Flush Gang. And a TV detective. What? Alright, Sinestro, Prankster. Parliament of Trees. Since before the dawn of human history, circumstances have brought about the creation of planet elementals on Earth, such as the Swamp Thing. In each case, the elemental was created when a man died in flames. An inhuman-looking plant elemental bearing a consciousness patterned after that of the dead man, thereupon rose from the mire in which the man had been submerged. Similar to Solomon Grundy, actually. The Prankster. Not to be confused with Toymaster, or Prank, or the Joker, or there's a bunch of other ones. Punch and Julie. Queen Bee. Quizlet again. I love little Quizlet. It's like a Cuisinart. Red Trinity. Doctor and scientist at the Institute in Soviet Siberia. I love how they have dollar symbols, red dollar symbols. Wow. So, I mean, that's really interesting. Instead of hammer and sickle, like, as, after the, Berlin Wall fell and communism in Russia, fell to capitalism, which is ironic because the whole reason why communism came about was as the antithesis or in reaction to the dangers of capitalism in society. And so, of course, it is ironic that, the biggest enemy that was communist gave way to the dollar, which, now, it's interesting. These villains have the dollar symbol on them. But, that is a good example of role reversal, where a good guy can become a bad guy depending on, whose side you're on. Are you, with the people? Are you defending the people? Are you actually helping the people? Or are you lying and saying you're helping the people, but are not? And you're, sending police to beat them. So, again, comic books are written by adults. They have adult themes in them, and nudity and violence. So that may be the appeal for a lot of children that read them, because it's a way into the adult world to learn about things that maybe your parents don't want to talk about. Sinestro. Skyhook. Don't know much about Skyhook, or a lot of these characters, actually. But that gives you an idea of just Suicide Squad. Okay. I guess the movie is based on them, but using different characters, I think. Tigress. Well, that's it for today. Tomorrow I will do this pack. And remember, black is not always evil and white is not always good. Have a good night or day.